everybody, my name is Carol Mack. This tutorial describes 3 categories of covered entities. Our focus is on the covered health provider. The definition of covered entity is a general provision of Title 45, Part 160. There are 3 kinds of HIPAA covered entities. The first kind is the health plan. Medicare and Medicaid are included. Indemnity, disability, and workers' compensation plans are not included. HIPAA doesn't cover employer-administered plans with fewer than 50 members. A healthcare clearinghouse is a covered entity, but a financial clearinghouse is not a covered entity. Most healthcare providers are covered entities. The definition includes any person who is paid for providing healthcare in the normal course of business. Providers are covered entities if they use HIPAA-covered transactions. HIPAA transactions are standard transmissions designed to carry out financial or administrative activities related to healthcare. There are 11 categories of HIPAA transactions. The most common transactions are claims, payments, and coordination of benefits. A provider that uses a clearinghouse to process claims is a covered entity. HIPAA doesn't cover employment relationships or judicial officers. A PHR vendor is a business associate, not a covered entity. A health plan administrator is a business associate, not a covered entity. Once a provider becomes a covered entity, is he always subject to HIPAA rules? We'll examine this question in Single Peak, a small fictional town in California. Priscilla and her husband Hudson have practiced medicine together for decades. They own a medical building on the south side of the plaza. Their attorney has an office nearby on the other side of Main Street. They employ an X-ray tech named Belle, who also does medical billing. When Belle does the billing, she uses HIPAA transactions. Dr. Kramer is a new chiropractor who recently joined the Pruitt Medical Group. He sees patients only on weekends and evenings. During the day, he teaches health education at Single Peak Public School. Today, Priscilla and Hudson are at the attorney's office. They have questions about Dr. Kramer's employment.
I'm worried about Dr. Kramer's job as a school teacher. We have patients enrolled in his health classes.
The function of teaching is not covered by HIPAA.
But he's going to be teaching medical subjects like sex education.
As a teacher, Kramer can answer general questions about sex, but he may not disclose individually identifiable health information that he obtains from your medical group because it's a covered entity.
What should Kramer do if a student discloses a medical condition that should be treated?
Dr. Kramer should send that student to the nurse's office.
Is the school nurse a covered entity?
No, the school nurse doesn't work for a covered entity. She works for the school district. A provider that doesn't use covered transactions is not a covered entity.
But sometimes we fax children's records to the school nurse.
The children's medical records are protected by HIPAA at your office, but they are not covered by HIPAA at school. The school is not a covered entity. Education records are excluded from HIPAA. FERPA, the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, protects student health records.
Do you suppose Hudson and I could quit being a covered entity? We recently bought an RV. I would like to travel across the country.
After you retire from practicing medicine, you won't be a covered entity, but the records you acquired during your practice are still covered by HIPAA. You must retain records for at least 6 years from when the record was created.
Wait a minute. I'm not ready to retire. I've been thinking about starting a concierge practice that doesn't involve HIPAA transactions.
Are you trying to avoid HIPAA rules by avoiding HIPAA transactions?
Yes, if I'm not a covered entity, I figure I won't have to follow HIPAA.
That's true. But California's Civil Code, the Confidentiality of Medical Information Act, applies to every provider in California.
You mean California is the same as HIPAA?
The CMIA is even more protective It adds another layer of privacy protection on top of HIPAA.
Well, I guess there's no point in trying to avoid HIPAA rules.
Look, all you have to do is train Dr. Kramer on your office policies and procedures.
Thanks, Anne. We'll start training him right away.
Covered entities are covered by HIPAA because they engage in covered transactions. HIPAA defines 3 categories of covered entities: health plans, clearinghouses, and healthcare providers. Thanks for joining me in this tutorial. Now I want you to meet my colleagues, Roman Diaz, President of Touchtone Compliance, and Karen Donral of Darnall Law Office.
We made these tutorials to help you learn about HIPAA and California law. For individual attention, go to our contact page. You can send us a message or schedule a consultation.
And I'm Roman Diaz, President of Touchtone Compliance. Our online tools and expert services provide everything you need to successfully address HIPAA compliance. We identify vulnerabilities, provide a thorough risk analysis, and assist with mitigation plans, policies and procedures, and staff training.